Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. To those of you who didn't come to the show yesterday, I am Gaarawarr. This is Gaarawarr's Guide to 2020 Champions. I'm double checking. That's exactly when I made the title, because I'm still surprised I agreed to this. Today, we're going to go over all 19 champions that were released in 2020. Somehow. We're gonna try. We're gonna try to do it. Good morning. Strap in. Hope you've got some caffeine. I chose not to have caffeine because I figured my brain would end up moving faster than my mouth, and I would forget stuff. So we're gonna do this with apple juice. All right. Let's hop in. And I wanted to just hop in, and we're going to level everybody up from the beginning. Let's pull out the people that we're not going to need here. We'll throw in some familiars. Hopefully everybody had a good holiday break. This is our first Gaarawarr's Guide back after the holidays. We're going to need... I may not need caffeine, but the game does. So, we're going to fly through here. We're going to try to cover all 19 champions. And if you're wondering how the heck they got 19 when there's only 17 in events in a year, it's because we had two Evergreen champions last year. Dragon Bailoth and Alcoria. And my voice is going already. That's wonderful. So we're going to cover them as well. So we're going to do both Evergreen champions, all 17 event champions. I'm going to try to do them in the order they released. I think I have it correctly. I think the hard part was remembering when Alcoria came out. Dragonbait was released on January 1st, 2020, so we're going to start there. Dragonbait is a slot 11 champion. He's an evergreen out of Tomb of Annihilation. He is the capstone to the Tomb of Annihilation campaign, effectively. He's all the way at the end, and for a long time was the most difficult adventure in all of Idle Champions. Nowadays, it's not as hard, honestly. With the raises in the soft cap, it's not that bad. Dragonbait likes to... I'm going to take that off now. Dragonbait likes to be a tank. He's going to want to be in the front row. He's modified, tanking in support. He gets modified by other champions in the formation. So his main core ability is called Shen State, which looks... not that great initially, because it says it increases damage to champions within one slot. But this gets modified by the other types of champions in the party, specifically, first up, by healers. So your range increases by the number of healers in the formation. And then you get some other modifications, like Shen State gets modified by each enemy attacking Dragonbait. This is what I usually refer to as a tanking ability. These are what truly make tanks, not just having a high overwhelm and lots of health, but an ability that has some kind of stacking ramping buff. When you're doing that is the big thing. He also gets the scent meat sauce. Dragonbait's all about scents. If you don't know about Dragonbait, go look him up. Dragonbait doesn't talk, he communicates by smelling different ways. Not by smelling, but him actually giving off odors. So he will smell like different things, and you have to interpret based off the smell. So this one increases effective Shen State for support champions. So, if you got healers in, you're double dipping. And his ultimate, Holy Avenger, it basically does lots of damage. It can mark, if it doesn't kill something, it will mark any fiend or undead, and they'll take 5 times damage. But it's also the only ultimate we have that clears stun and charm effects on your champions. So when you're fighting those crazy bosses that like to stun or charm you and keep you from doing things, you can ult with Dragonbait and clear that right off, which is pretty nice. His specs, upgrades, he's kind of a bit fiddly. You got to do some math with him. One of his abilities that we were looking at a moment ago... it doesn't show it on this side, does it? Oh, yeah, it's down here. Scent roasted chicken. Herbs and spices. One of these abilities... I guess I'm going to have to look over here to get... Yeah, okay. We get more information in the formation buffs. I knew this was in here somewhere. Meat sauce buffs a different amount based off how many slots away the support champions are. And it prioritizes slots that are 2 and 3 away, as you can see here. Much bigger buffs if they're up close. With his spec, you can switch that around to give much bigger buffs if they're super far away. So this is one of those formational layout-based abilities. If you have the right layout, you might want to pick this. But most of the time, you're going to go herbs and spices, right? We will just... Well, I'm not going to do that with a familiar. It'll take too long. I'm just going to click and hold down, and we'll level them all the way up. Well, not quite. We'll get them there eventually. That should be... If I'm remembering off the top of my head. Yep, that's the last of his actual formation abilities. His feats tend to go through, the usual tanking and support stuff. So he gets the generic all champs damage and the generic health stuff. He also gets the focus stuff for Shin State, and he gets some overwhelm as well. So you basically have everything you're looking for in a tank. If you want to increase his tankiness, pretty solid. Like I said, that's an unlock all the way at the end of Tomb of Annihilation. So well past Azaka. I believe it's called Asoriel's Lament, where you fight the #1 stunner herself, Valindra Shadowmantle. Still a real interesting fight. It's one of the more enjoyable fights, like boss fights, I think, in Idle Champions. Starting off 2020 in terms of event champions... we had Morgane. Morgane comes to us from... Dragonite comes to us from books a long time ago, as well as recent games and the Tomb of Annihilation campaign. Morgane comes to us from Acquisitions Incorporated. She is basically a contract killer. Yay! We love them. No, but that's basically what she does. So Morgane is going to be support, and they give her the gold tag, but do not be fooled. They give her that tag because she takes your gold. I don't know why. Don't know why they gave her the tag. No, I do know why. It's because one of her abilities helps to buff based off people who have the gold find tag. But she takes your gold. She doesn't give you any, so be aware of that. Her first ability is basically double tap, so her shot just becomes kind of a double. If she kills her target, she shoots them again just for good measure. Like I said, she's a contract killer. And they drop a second set of gold, which really only matters early on in the game because, again, she's a support. She's not a DPS. So interesting ability, but I don't necessarily find it super useful. Paid up front is the core of her kit, though. She is one of the only members of Acquisitions Incorporated to get paid in advance because Omen doesn't want her hunting him down, basically. Smart man. She collects 25% all gold dropped by enemies, but increases your damage because of that. She has certain thresholds she has to reach. Mine is up there pretty high, but it could be higher. So 880% bonus. So as you reach each of these kind of EO1 thresholds, you get a little bump up. It's not necessarily something that you go out and actively try to raise. You just use Morgane and she'll take your gold and it will go up. And when you stop to like a Azaka farm, just throw her in for like the last 5 to 10 minutes of an Azaka farm and let her collect a little gold there. And you'll make sure that you're kind of stacked at the top, as long as you're, doing it when you're at a very high level, and not like doing it at a lower level Azaka farm. So maybe like in an event, each event, if that's when you've pushed the furthest, that's a good time to break Morgane out and throw her some cash. Friends and Wealth is the kind of odd. The reason she has this gold find tag. She's going to increase the damage of all champions for each gold find champion in the formation. It's not necessarily something you build a formation around, but if you happen to have champions in there that do have gold find, it's going to be a nice little bonus for you. And then her ultimate attack is called Customize Arrow, and they have to actually explain it because there's a lot going on. One of her is she just does one of these at random. She has one skull-carved arrow that hits all the enemies in a line. Another one explodes the smoke powder arrow explodes when it hits an enemy, dealing AoE damage. And then the green leaf arrow does 300 damage over 20 seconds, so it's basically damage over time. When we get to her ultimate, she actually has, or her specializations, she actually has 3 sets of specializations. She is, in this regard, what I consider to be I knew I was going to blank at some point during 19 champions. She has the most modifiable kit, basically, in terms of most flexible kit. She gets to modify how she applies her buffs in ways that no other champions, just not to this degree do they get to do this. So she starts off where it's just adjacent champions, but then she can choose to have it be non-adjacent. She can have it be all champions in front. She can have it be all champions behind. And if you're going, but Gar, if she can just say non-adjacent, then isn't that the same as these? No, it's not, because, if I have her non-adjacent, she's only going to buff, these 3 columns up here and not this column too. Whereas if I do all in front, it will do everyone but her, right? These are important things to keep in mind. I'm going to leave this as fine as is because, I'm not necessarily building a formation per se, but I am going to demonstrate one thing with her that comes up with her kit here in a minute. And that is the second set of her upgrades. So the second and third set of her upgrades actually both pick from this same pool of 4 specialization choices. So when you get here, you're going to get two of these. You can pick one now and you can pick one later. They all do something a little different. So keep it simple, just gives you a straight 300% buff. Tight formation gives you 75% additively for each adjacent champion. That's why I have her in the center of this formation. Calm under pressure. If you're within 2 slots of the tanking champions, any champions that are tanking enemies, it starts buffing up 20% for each enemy, up to a stack of 20 enemies. And then the long game increases the effective paid up front by 10% for every second that an enemy isn't killed, up to a max of 60 seconds. It does reset when an enemy is killed. So ultimately, when it comes to picking her specializations, you want to understand your formation and your placement, and also understand where you're looking to get your damage from. If you don't have super tanky tanks, like super survivable tanks, the long game probably isn't going to be great because you might not last for 60 seconds while getting beat on by tons of monsters before you can ramp up. However, if you can, this is going to be the most bang for your buck. At 10% times 60 seconds, you're looking at a nice big chunk of damage, 600%, or, whereas with Calm Under Pressure, you're looking at 20% times 20, it's 400%. 3 of those are both better than Keep It Simple, but maybe sometimes if you can't be, this survivable, or if you're not within 2 of your tank, maybe you have to go down here. Tight formation obviously varies based on the number of champions that you can have adjacent to her. In this specific formation, in Sword Coast, if you were to put her right here in the middle, she can have 6 adjacent to her. That is the most you can get. And with 75, that means you're going to end up with about, what are we looking at, 450%. So this, with 6, actually beats out Calm Under Pressure. In most cases, though, you're probably going to choose, if you want the maximum damage and you're survivable and you're within 2 slots of your tank, you're going to go Calm Under Pressure in the long game for the maximum possible buff. But in this situation, we would go Tight Formation and long game. And we'll just throw a Mimic on there. 1 second. All right. Oh, hey. And we're at the soft cap now. And I want to say that's all she's got. Yeah, she just gets the spec choices. Yep. So she doesn't have Acquisitions Incorporated as an affiliation, doesn't necessarily have anything that boosts each other based off that. So this is just her straightforward kit. She works with anyone. Like I said, she's a contact killer. As long as you give her money, she's going to do good stuff for you. So that is Morgaine. I have to check my notes because with 19 champions, I can't remember the order of them all. Havilar is next. Havi is one of the Brimstone Angels from Aaron M. Evans' book. You can find Aaron on Champions of Lore on Mondays with Trevor and B. Dave Walters here on the CNE Games channel. So Havilar is tanking and support. Let's throw her out here. Get her leveled up to... Oh, I'm like, where's her spec choice? I've got her in this formation. My bad. Oh well, we'll go back and we'll discuss her spec choices. I'll pop a respec pot here in a moment. So Havilar is a tanking champion. She can also, be support E, but usually you would want, in general, most tanks you would rather have tanking than supporting, but there are some exceptions to that rule. She gets her ultimate right away. Right away. First thing that she gets is her ultimate. And that is because her kit revolves around her ultimate. So her ultimate causes her to summon her imps. And let me throw those out there. Boom! This is total lore. She gets imps through being a brimstone angel, chosen of Asmodeus. So when she summons her imps, they come out and they do different things based off which combination of imps she has. So Mott will always be around. That is one of her imps. But then she has 3 other imps who come out and tend to get killed in glorious ways. And that is what her ultimate does. If you fire it off again, that other imp will go and suicide itself on enemies, doing a massive burst of AoE damage and also slowing the enemies. That slow is kind of a big deal for her because the more times you apply it, the slower people move until eventually they're just stuck in place. Currently, that is how it works. Whether that was intended or not, not my place to say. But that's what happens, and you can do some shenanigans with that so that things don't touch you. But you can do whatever you want with them. So keep that in mind. Her other specialization, I'm not going to do a respec pot. Her first specialization lowers the cooldown of this so that you basically do heroic sacrifice and the ultimates real quick. So that's if you're really rotating through the different setups and you're using her ultimate to bomb and to do slowdown stuff. That's the one you choose. Otherwise, the spec I'm in right now just increases one of her tanking buffs. We're also going to go over the different effects her imps have, because again, that is kind of the core of her kit. Leadership Summit, though. Havilar increases the damage of all champions in the 2 columns behind her. This ability is augmented by whichever imps are currently assisting her. So like I said, her imps are kind of the key. But this is the first of her big support buffs. Infernal Fortitude is just the health shared. Dragonbait has one of these too. I didn't go over it because basically every single tanking champ is going to have a health share. Some of them only have it. One of them only has it in certain specs. Nayeli only gives that in her devotion spec, but most just give it to you everywhere. Fiendish Resolve. This is another one of her kind of lore-based abilities. When any fiend is in the area, Havilar focuses less on her own attacks and more on buffing the party. Her base attack cooldown is doubled, but the effect of her leadership summit's increased, right? This is one of the keys, because this works with some imps too, and we'll talk about that in a minute when I come over here to formation buffs and show that off, and we'll go over what each of the imps do. Battlemaster is her ramping buff. Like I said, tanks like to have a real tank ability is going to have a ramping buff. So this is increasing all damages for each enemy. This is for each enemy she hit, as opposed to being hit. Mastery of Battle is the specialization choice I chose, and yeah, that's all of that stuff. I remember, we'll go back to Morgana in a second. I forgot to look at her feats. And then she does have the general smattering of feats, tanky feats, just like Dragonbait did with health and all champs damage, and then her overwhelm, and then her specific leadership summit stuff. But if we hop over here, we will see that this is where you get to see that these imps she has out affects herself or her buffs in different ways. So like right now, Mod is always going to be, he's got this combination, he's going to be increasing by 400% on Tieflings. Dembo, which is the first imp that always comes out. They always come out in the same order. Leadership Summit by 200%, but we're going to rotate through. It's probably better if I just pull up her thing and read them all off to you from my guides on the subreddit, which I updated over the holidays. If you spend any time on the subreddit, you know this because I spent 12 days basically spamming posts on the subreddit. 78 of them. Enjoy. I did. So Dembo increases Leadership Summit by 200%. Mott's always going to do Leadership Summit by 400%. Ala, which is the second imp that comes out, is 50% Leadership Summit, 50% for each enemy Havi is tanking. So there's her ramping buff. So that one can go up quite a bit, obviously. And this is what makes Havilar a bit more of an active tank, like active play tank, because manipulating which imp is out is going to change the buffs and you're going to want to do that based off your situation. Bosch is the last of the 3 rotatable imps, and he will increase the effective leadership summit by 400% if there are any enemy or boss enraged stacks active. So that's basically what you would use on a boss level to make sure you're getting the maximum buff. Now, Fiendish Resolve, let me pull that up over here, so you can see it over here. Fiendish Resolve, oh, I don't have an imp out. That's why. Some of this information only comes up if imps come out. Here we go. Fiendish Resolve will then now show you that you get some bonuses on imps. So Mott is always going to increase Leadership Summit again by 25% per fiend on the screen. So this is really good in, say, Descent into Avernus, which has tons of fiends. It's also... well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. With Dembo, the first one that comes out, fiends have a 50% chance of dropping 2 quest items or counting for 2 kills when killed. This is her speed effect, so this is what makes her a good speed champion in Mad Wizard, because Mad Wizard does have fiend levels. They're not all fiends, but there are a good number of them, and thus she can help you run faster through Mad Wizard, as long as you have her imps out. Alla, the second rotating imp, fiends take double damage from ultimates. Bosch halves the damage Havilar takes from all attacks and triples the damage of Heroic Sacrifice. So Bosch is basically having Bosch out makes her super tank Havilar. If you're trying to get her to be super tanky. I mean, half damage. That's super nice. Although with the way things ramp up, it can go up pretty quick, like against bosses, but against regular enemies, that's super nice. That basically, I believe that goes over to all of Havi. Yeah. Am I missing anything? Nope. Yep. Okay. Let's go back real quick to Morgane, because I did forget the feats. Morgane's feats, she gets the general, most support get the all champs damage stuff. Then she goes specifically into her paid up front stuff, and then she has one for friends and wealth, but I love the name, Running with the Cool Kids. Because, of course, cool kids have money, right? Yeah. I would stick to paid up front and all champs damage. I don't know that the rest are really that big of a deal. Okay, tab to the right screen. Gaarawarr, that would be nice. All right. Next up, a champion that I don't know that they got a lot of love when they first came out, but I enjoy them. Sesaspia. Sesaspia is our Yuan-Ti Pureblood Druid. Circle of Spores, if I remember correctly. I say that because she surrounds herself with spores. You see them just flying around her. She's our evil healer. So right off the bat, her first thing is Halo of Spores. This is everything revolves her kit, and her entire kit revolves around Halo of Spores. So she builds these up. I want to say up to 20. Yeah, 20 as the base. She can modify that with one of her spec choices. When enemies are damaged, like she basically, when an enemy comes on the screen, she flings a spore at them. She just 1 on regular enemies, up to 4 on bosses, and they take additional damage over time when someone hits them. So it's kind of like you smack them for 1,000 damage, and then they'll take, well, I currently have it at 330% more damage over time. So it's like it's kind of like an increased damage debuff. It's a dot instead of an instant thing. Symbiotic Infection. This is her buff to companion. She can buff within 2 slots of herself. And then Symbiotic Healing. She will heal again within 2 slots of herself. A very small amount per second. However, it's per spore she has in reserve. So the more spores she has built up, the more she heals. This is one of the things that people don't necessarily like about her, because if enemies are just streaming out onto the screen, she's throwing out all of her spores, and thus her heals aren't very big. However, on boss fights, she's fantastic, because there's usually a fixed amount of enemies. And so she can build up to her max spores and get lots of heals out. And her heals are pretty solid when she has max spores, while also debuffing and buffing, and she gets everything on the boss fights. So I tend to use her as a swap in on boss fights. But that's just me. With her spec, she basically modifies how all of this works. So Simple Infection, she basically just doubles her Symbiotic Infection, which is the buff for nearby champions. Spreading Spores, though, gives her ramps up how often she generates spores and also raises the max to 30. This tends to be the general use spec choice for Sesaspia. If you use her like I do, though, where you just pull her in on a boss level, and you don't use her on all the junk mob levels, Fungal Body is actually the most potential buffage, because she basically triples her damage and healing buffs when she has full spores, which again is only usually on those boss fights. So I tend to go Fungal Body, but since we're just running along, we're going to go Spreading Spores. We'll put a familiar on there, and I want to say that's everything for her. Yeah, she's very straightforward. It's really just about managing those spores. In terms of feats, again, you have everything's related to the spores. She does have all champs damage and some healing buff, generic healing buffs, but then it becomes about her Halo of Spores and Symbiotic Infection, which tends to be what I run, because those are the 40%ers. And generally, I mean, if you really need survivability, you can always swap this in. But usually I'm looking for damage, so I go for it. So in those cases, like I said, she is very situational. Again, we could throw her like right here in this formation. She would be able to heal and buff everyone in this party now. Yeah. So she is situationally effective. She is a niche champion, but in that niche, I find her to be very strong. So speaking of niche champions, Briv Steelmarrow. He's not a niche champion. Briv is a Briv of all trades, taking healing and support, and he does all of those things. He tanks very well, I believe, in the early to mid game, in my opinion. He has potentially the biggest healing in the game, and some decent support, and he also has the most broken speed ability in Idle Champion. I see. Robogoblin's like, Briv the Beautiful, I guess, depending on your point of view. All right, so Briv is our half-orc. He's a hack. Half-orc paladin. He comes to us from... wow, I don't know which show you want to cut. Heroes of Vale, Beyond Heroes, either one. So he is friends with Penelope Halfpint, and Alindra Sarbrand, and Orkira, and Keen, Deopreth, and Averin. Yeah. So we got some of those in the game, and who knows, maybe at some point we'll have more. So the core of Briv's kit comes out to his Steel Bones ability. So when he comes under attack, he gets armored. It takes less damage, but the most important part is he gains stacks of Steel Bones. Everything about Briv, basically at this point, revolves around those stacks. Obviously, early on in levels, you're not really gonna get hit. So to build stacks, you really need to push super deep with Briv. Netherese Steel buffs all the champions behind him. He's a tank. By a very tiny % for each of those stacks. But again, you're going to be stacking, you're going to be taking all the damages later on when you're pushing, and this is going to ramp up, and the more you get hit, the bigger he buffs. His Unnatural Haste is a little complicated in the sense that it doesn't apply right away, like in your first run. Because he needs to have sprint stacks. And the way you get sprint stacks is you build up Steelbone stacks, and then you complete your run. And then you start a new run. He turns all of the Steelbone stacks that he gained on a run into sprint stacks on his next run. So if you want to use him as a speed champion, you have to at least use him once and push real deep with him and build up lots of stacks. So the way this works, he consumes 4% of his sprint stacks, so the number of stacks isn't necessarily as important as just getting a decent amount of them, because he's pulling a percentage instead of a flat amount. He has to have at least 50 stacks to do this. And how many do I have? We've seen him jumping around here already. Oh, Yeah, I already ran out. We already jumped him through 25 areas, and I don't have any stacks left. So, but he basically he gets these springs out of his feet, and he shoots off the screen. It's hilarious, and then he lands a level further. When you start off, it is a percentage chance to trigger, and that percentage chance is affected by an item. It's the Theodinorex item. You can actually surpass 100% chance. And once you do, it drops back down to 50% chance, but it drops to a 50% chance to jump 2 levels. And then if you ramp it all the way back up to 100% again, it drops back to 50% chance to drop 3 levels. And it keeps going. It takes a lot of investment of blacksmithing contracts or buying items, whatever you're going to do. It takes a lot. But, Briv does have the ability to go earn it with all that speed, right? So... it is a bottomless pit though. So once you start down that path, give yourself a goal, and don't go past that goal. I'm close to I'm at 90%. I'd like to get it up to 99, but I'm in no hurry. And that's just a chance to jump once. All right. Unnatural haste, healing flow though. This is my favorite. Briv has a pet flump. If you notice here, Flo. She's the one bobbing up and down beside him. She heals Briv after he takes damage. So she stores all the damage that he takes, and after 10 hits or 10 seconds, whichever comes first, she heals everyone for that amount. For half of that amount originally. We'll get to her spec choice. And there's his health share. With her specs... go with the flow. It actually increases the ability by 50%. It started at 50%. That doesn't mean it's 100, folks. That means it goes up to 75, just to be clear. However, there are other effects in the game that increase healing. Specifically, if we go over to patrons and we go to Mert and we have Perk Up, which is his tier 2 global, it increases the healing received by tank champions by 50%. Well, all this stuff stacks, folks. And when you stack Go with the Flow with Perk Up, you end up with over 100% healing, which means every 10 seconds or 10 hits, Briv heals to full. Yeah. So this is what makes him a great tank in the early to mid games, because if he's got enough health to live for 10 seconds, at least 10 seconds, or at most, I should say, 10 seconds, then he's just going to heal back up to full if you've got that stuff. And you can keep on tanking. This is why people really like Briv in the early to mid game. But that is specifically with the healing flow spec, or the Go with the Flow spec. You can run Metalborn or Tempered Steel. Metalborn is kind of what I refer to as a speed spec, because you're basically using fewer sprint stacks. They use the wrong word here. Using fewer sprint stacks so that you can get more jumps out of him. And then Tempered Steel is like if you just want to maximize his Nethery Steel buffs, like his buff to the rest of the party. But honestly, I feel like Go with the Flow. If you're actually tanking with him, Go with the Flow is where you want to go. You want that survivability on him, and you want it from this. Just doubling his buff isn't as big of a deal as keeping him alive longer. So we will take that, because I already used up all my sprint stacks. We max him out. I believe that's the last. Notice he's got this nice armor wrapping him up now. It doesn't show it here. This is what he normally looks like, but when he's getting beat on, he shoots that metal out of his pores. He's basically like the D&D Wolverine in a sense, with metal in his bones. He has the usual health feats, increased damage of all champions. He's got his overwhelm feats. And then he does have one focused one just for his Nethery Steel. But that's all we got with Briv so far. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 champs in. We're 25% of the way done, and we used half an hour. Wow. Okay. 19 champs. I'm going to have to speed up. Melf is next on the plate. Melf the elf. I've got him in his holiday skin that they gave us for free for Christmas. So we've got Elf Melf. I mean, he is an elf, though. Elf Melf the elf? I don't understand. Anyway, Melf is the legendary D&D character created by Luke Gygax, Gary's son. He joins us in the game to give us some support and some speed. Honestly, I think that's what he gets used for the most. But he has it as adaptive support spell. Increases the damage of champions adjacent to him. The effect is increased if another elf is in the formation, and the range is increased based off his position in the formation. So if he's not in the full front or full back, if he's somewhere in the middle, he'll buff more people. And then it's increased by 10% for each unique race in the formation. So ultimately, the main thing, that's a lot of information to take in. Ultimately, the main thing is just don't have him all the way in the front to the back if you can help it, if you want to give him some range to his buff. Because if I put him all the way back here, he's just buffing this column. But if I put him here, he's buffing all the way up to this column, right? And if I were to put him up here, he buffs everyone in the whole party. Placement matters. Righteous Determination. This is an odd ability. Because it only affects the damage certain enemies take from ultimates. So basically, he picks out occasionally an enemy and deems it evil. And they take more damage from ultimate attacks. If you were at the part in your Idle Champion's progress where ultimates are really what all you're using at your wall, the Melf might be fun for you, but it's only going to be on a certain number of enemies. Melf Speedy Supplement, though, this is kind of, I think this is what most people use Melf for currently. He gives you a random speed buff that changes every 50 areas. It's one of the three possible things here. Either a chance to spawn additional enemies, a chance to increase enemy spawn speed. Now what that means is the rate from which they go from the side of the screen to the point on the screen where they can be killed. So it's just that small little jump there. And a chance to increase quest drops. So they're all great, honestly. But if you can modify this increased quest drop stacks with other champs that do increased quest drops, like Havilar. So if you have a Melf and Havilar out on the same level and it's got fiends on it, all of a sudden you're killing like 2 or 3 things and then you're moving on to the next level. It's pretty amazing. And this is modified by an item. This one right here is Striking Spellbook. So again, like Briv, it's this bottomless pit of potential item level buffage. When I max out here in a minute, I think my chance is up to like 300%, and it does stack above. So above 100%, then the chance is like at 150%, it's a chance to spawn 2 enemies. At 200%, it's a chance to spawn 3, etc., etc., etc. And of course, his ultimate is Melf's Minute Meteors. They spin around his head. If you see them real quick up there, they're little snowman heads in this skin, which is pretty hilarious. His specs, you can either get bonus, adaptive support, which is his buff ability, bonus to the Righteous Determination, which is that ultimate damage, or the speed supplements. And we're going to go, even though we're already basically to the wall of this current formation, we're going to go speed supplements, and that's, unless I'm forgetting something. Oh, augmented support spell. Yes, I forgot this. Increase the effect of adaptive support spell. So this is just basically buffs his other support ability by 50% on the non-dominant gender in the formation. Increases the effect of adaptive support by 50% for each slot away a champion is from Melf. So again, Melf is real finicky about where he's placed in a formation and who's in the formation, and this kind of goes in on that finicky nature. He has the usual support abilities with damage all champions, but then everything else is really about his adaptive support. He's got speedy supplement, so if you're using it for speed, that's what you want. And then he has one for his the one that buffs his ultimate damage. Righteous Determination. Ba-dum-ba-dum-bum. That's Melf. On to a champion that doesn't get a whole lot of conversation. Krydle. Krydle is one of the heroes of Baldur's Gate. He's a DPS support. He's rogue. So here's a Baldur's Gate. He kind of likes to be with them. So that's Delana, Minsk, Neris, and Shandy. There's a lot of DPS in the Heroes of Baldur's Gate. So running a full team is a little more difficult. That's probably why we don't see a lot of Cradle in the game currently. From the shadows, it increases the damage of all champions in the back 2 columns of the formation. And its effect is doubled on the heroes, including himself. So, he wants to buff all the people that are back here. Some formations, that's viable. Others, maybe not so much. Like in Sword Coast, there's usually a buff for being in the middle, but, you don't have to follow those guidelines. So he's going to buff everybody back here, which works really well with Delana. Delana likes to be as far in the back as possible. And we're dying. We don't have a full formation. What can I say? Oh, okay. Charismatic Leader. He provides buffs based on the charisma score of other champions, not unlike a certain Hitch. But that Hitch just wants 14 or higher. Cradle will go either low or high or in the middle, and it depends. So Lead with Flare, it increases the damage by 100% for each champion in the formation with charisma scores between 12 and 16. Or Wild Cards, he increases the damage of champions with a charisma score of 11 and lower or 17 and higher. And that's the bigger buff, right? So the first one was 100%, but the second one is 2,700% with my current items. So you really want to do that, right? Thieves can't, but they can. Increase the effective Charismatic Leader by 100% for each rogue in the formation. So he wants that full rogue party. It's not a huge buff. I mean, it is multiplicative, which can be crazy. But I don't know if we have a full set of rogues that could build out a formation, specifically because there's no rogue tank. So you're going to get to a certain amount, and whether it's effective or not, you can try it out based off the rogues you have. His specs modify how these abilities are going to get buffed. So you can do the Charismatic Leader Lead with Flare one by 200%, or Wild Cards. Again, these are his choices about which range of things he's going to buff. So if you were using him as DPS, then it's Close-Up Magic. Otherwise, you're doing, if I remember a card, yeah. Otherwise, Wild Cards is going to be everybody else, right? And I don't. No, I want to say he's pretty straightforward. Yeah, he doesn't have anything else in that. So that's basically all of his kit. He does really want to be with the Heroes of Baldur's Gate. He does really want to be with lots of rogues, again, Heroes of Baldur's Gate. So he doesn't currently see a whole lot of play because of those very specific things. One sec. Into the people asking questions. I will get to all the questions. I will attempt to get to the questions after we get through all the champions. Normally we do the first half, like the focus guide portion, for an hour. And then the second hour we do... I'm trying to find this champion. I don't remember where they are. The second hour we do questions. But it's going to take me more than an hour to get through all of these. So I don't know how much time we're going to require soon, but I will do my best. Next up on the list is Jahira. Jahira. As we all know, her hips don't lie. No, that's the wrong person. Jahira, I have her in her throwback skin, as I like to call it. Baldur's Gate Jahira. This is what she normally looks like. This is the new, more modern, updated Jahira look. But if you like to go with that old school Jahira that you know and love, it's in the game. She is a fighter druid, half-elf, DPS support. And she throws herself in right away with a spec choice, and her kit is basically built around kind of this. So she's gonna buff based off groups of champions. So you have to know right off the bat who is your DPS going to be in this formation. Is it going to be clerics, wizards, sorcerers, and warlocks? Is it going to be barbarians, fighters, rogues, and monks, or is it going to be paladins, rangers, druids, and bards? Now, she is a fighter barbarian. We're just going to throw that in just because I'm picking one and I don't care. Her second set, again, this is one of those 2-spec sets. She has a focus. Let's go talk about that first. Fierce Protector. She goes into a rage whenever she sees a beast enemy die. This increases her damage by 400% and increases the effect of her class warfare by 100%. So class warfare is that buff on whoever you've chosen as your DPS, which can be her. So this can kind of, be a big thing if you want to use Jahira as a DPS. Her battle rage, she tracks the number of enemies that's killed that she is a fierce protector of. After 20 are killed, she goes into a rage, which increases the effect of fierce protector by 200% for 30 seconds. And then that rage lingers through lingering anger. So this is all built around this portion of her kit. She increases damage of all champions, including herself, for each stack of lingering anger she has. Now, these don't persist on multiple runs. This isn't like Zorbu or Black Viper or Toragar. This is just in this run, a lot like Briv. So she builds up these stacks and does more damage based off of it. So ultimately, you want to pick what she is a fierce protector of, which is where we're going with this, based off the type of enemies you're going to see in that adventure. So it starts off with beasts, and you can leave it there. You can switch it over to fiends, which is great for Descent into Avernus, or you can choose it trigger off humanoids, right? I'm going to go humanoids just because humans suck. This mood brought to you by 2021. All right. And then Unity increases the effect of class warfare by 100% for each champion affected by it. So this again goes back to the groupings that we chose, like not just who your DPS was, but who's going to be in your party. So if you're building kind of a group centered around those kinds, it's going to be maximized. Again, it's 100%. It is multiplicative, which is nice, but you aren't necessarily always going to be able to build a super viable formation out of that. Sometimes you want a bigger buff off a different type of champion that doesn't really fit in. So keep that in mind. You can track her battle rage over here, like current stacks and lingering anger, current stacks. All of that can be tracked in the formations buffs tab. With her feats, she does get a mix of things because she is a DPS support. So she's got self damage. She's got all champs damage. She can buff her class warfare ability, with one. So she's got some range. She's got some range. Next up, this is where I was doing this a little early. We're gonna swap out Dragonbait. Maybe we should come back here to somewhere where we're not getting pulverized. Nova. Nova joins us from Erois, a whole other plane of existence. But that's fine. Nova's a member of the Heroes of Erois, so she likes to be in groups with Ayla, Lucius, Nova, herself, obviously, Keelik, and Sentry. But they actually have an affiliation boost, so this actually matters. You do actually kind of want them in a group. She's going to do tanking and support, and right away, this is kind of the key to her, and that is her curiosity. And when monsters are killed, she collects trophies. So off of bosses, she collects brains, and off of everyone else, she collects hearts. Bit gruesome. She's a serial killer. And then she basically buffs in different ways based off these. So you want her, if you're going to use Nova, you want her in as soon as possible. She is a slot 11 champion, so you got to have a lot of gold to get her in right away, but the sooner you get her in, the more she's collecting. And basically this matters more for the bosses. So as long as you can get her in before level 5, you're going to maximize the amount of brains she gets, and that's kind of her biggest thing. So you want her hitting every single boss and collecting a brain off every single boss on your run. So the further you can push in idle champions, the better she is going to get because of that. You can farm hearts, just like sitting here killing stuff. We can just farm all the hearts. That's fine. You just can't farm brains on boss levels. Discovery is her second ability. She gets these right off the bat. So she increases the damage of the 5 champions in the formation with the highest intelligence score. So she wants to play with the smart people. I don't blame her. This gets buffed by monster hearts by 0.1% and brains by 10%. So again, the more brains you have, the better. In general, makes sense, right? Protective field is her health share. Close encounter, she increases the effect of discover for each enemy attacking her. So again, this is that ramping tanking buff we like to see on our tanks. And then she has a slow where her attacks slow the movement of enemies by 50% for 5 seconds, and those enemies then deal half damage to her. This is nice, but she has a single target attack, so it's kind of best against bosses. Because otherwise making sure you're hitting the enemies that are attacking her isn't necessarily like if there's a lot built up. A cleave would have been nicer. Her spec choices either increase the number of champions that int-based buff applies to, or doubles her discovery, right? So if you're building your formation correctly, like around a smart champion, then you're going to just want to double discovery. Let's max her out. And look, she has one more. Yep, there it is. Failsafe. When she becomes overwhelmed, Tiangong, her sentient sword, creates a protective barrier around her, giving her temporary HP and stunning her until the shield is broken or she's no longer overwhelmed. It only triggers once per area. It's increased based off the brain she's collected. It stacks multiplicatively. I've run her from the beginning of my run to my wall before and never found this to be super amazing. It's a little bit of shield, but there are other tanks that have better self shields that happen consistently, like Alo or Tyrell, or Calliope's better. So don't go relying on failsafe. Just a heads up. Cosmic Resonance is her Heroes of Erois thing. So all the Heroes of Erois are automatically buffed by Discovery and aren't included in the calculations for the highest int score. So this is super nice. So if you're building out an Erois party, but maybe you're using somebody else's DPS and they're not super smart, you don't have to worry. You can still target your DPS with that buff. And she has her Erois Synergy, which is their big thing for the synergizing in amongst each of the things. So they have a pool that they create. She contributes to it based off the number of champions that are buffed by Discovery. And then Discovery then gets buffed by 25% of the Erois pool. So the more members of the Heroes of Erois, the more amazing that gets. Oh, Feats. She's got two of them. No. Let's see. So damage of all champions, health, the usual things, and then she gets close encounter and discovery if you want to go specific. I think this has to be a chest feat. Then this one is the gem feat that you buy. So depending on what you want to get, pick up one or the other. And who's up next? Oh, the luckiest of boys. Where is he? Here he is. Freely. They just covered Freely on Champions of Lore last time. This is B. Dave Walters' actual character from Beyond Heroes and Silver and Steel. And here we go. He is support in gold, and he is pretty strong. Probably one of the stronger characters that came out. Let me just check my list. Yeah, one of the stronger characters that came out in 2020. So he's going to be support in gold. He's going to do a lot of stuff with other champions, and we'll go over that. But one of the nice things that's not listed here, I guess it's kind of under gold, is he's also a favor booster. So for each area completed with Freely in the formation, you gain a bonus to the divine favor you earn when you complete your adventure. So he is like Nova. You want him in right from the start. And then you want him in the entire time. But then once you get to the end, he can come out. This Adventurous Tale buff will apply whether he's in the formation at the end or not. But it basically, all of the gold and everything that you earn there's normally a favor conversion, right? But then he boosts that favor conversion on top of that. So not only does he give you gold, help you get gold during the party, which we'll come to down here, he also then increases the amount of favor that converts into, which is pretty crazy. Luck of Yondala, this is his big thing, and it gives you no information about it on this tab. We're going to get into more of that on the formations buff screen. Unlucky for them, this buffs his Luck of Yondala, the opportunity, so we're going to have to go talk about that. But first, this is the important part of Freely's kit to make sure that you're applying things correctly. His Luck of Yondala normally only gets applied by himself, but once you pick your specialization, it gets applied by these other groups of champions. You can either go Lawful Champions, you can go Neutral Champions, or you can go Chaotic. I'm just going to pick Chaotic, because why not? keep going. All right. And we're just going to come over to the formation buffs tab so we can talk about Luck of Yandala. So as you can see, there's a lot going on here. Each champion that attacks with Luck of Yandala applies a random lucky break to enemies they hit, and that lasts for 15 seconds. So it's a time-based, bonus. Opportunity, which shows up as a cornucopia over their heads. All of these little images apply over each other. But just so you know, opportunity is a cornucopia. The target takes 100% more damage per application. These stack multiplicatively. These multiplicative stacks like this are kind of the broken math in the game. So Freely's a bit, broken in this regard if you do things right. Requisition, which is the fruit, it makes the enemy drop more gold. Again, multiplicatively. This is the major gold find portion of Freely. Follow through. Any champion who attacks the target will have the next base attack cooldown reduced by 0.1 seconds per application. That's nice. It makes you attack quicker. And here's the thing. If you're attacking quicker, you're stacking up more stacks, which means you're potentially attacking even quicker. It's this whole round and round thing that you got going on here. Which feeds into itself. Stagger, which is the shield. The target has 2% chance per application of being stunned when they're attacked. So this is just a whole lot of goodness. A whole lot of goodness. And you kind of build, you want to make sure that, in a sense, you build formations a bit around Freely so that he's stacking all of this. This comes into major play when you're doing like your gold find formations. So when you're doing like an Azaka farm, some people will skip necessarily putting in some gold find champions, especially if they're low percent gold find champions, and instead make sure that those champions that they put in those places, champions that align more with Freely, because his stuff stacks multiplicatively. So having more of these multiplying against itself is better than having low percent chance gold find champions. So if we keep going on, cutting words. Interesting. It doesn't get used a whole lot. I don't feel like you usually place Freely based off cutting words. But he'll raise Overwhelm with tanking champions that are under attack by 5, as long as he's within 3 slots of them. This is a positional formation ability, and as such, it is bulked up and usurped by Archon. And this is probably the greatest use of cutting words in the game. If you bulk up, it's going to depend on what your Archon bulk up usurp item percent is. With my ability, with my item, cutting words, you bulked up goes to 201 overwhelm. Usurped only 196, which is interesting, but either way, that's a lot of overwhelm, folks. It's a lot of overwhelm. So if you really want to just see super shenanigans overwhelm numbers with Archon, throw Freely in the mix. His feats, they really get... The stuff that you really want is the stuff that buffs up things like Requisition, Adventurous Tale. This one you just put in when you're completing. You can literally just slot this feat when you're about to reset your run, and it just buffs his Adventurous Tale. And then when you start your run, you put something else in. Usually unlucky for them, and maybe Damage All Champs, or... I mean, he does Damage All Champs. He's got Gold Find. He's got the goods. Freely's got the goods. He's basically the core. If you have him, he should be basically in all your parties. That's what it comes down to. He's also the core of, well, not the core. He's a major player, along with our next duo, which we're going to go over to right now. He's a major player in the click debuff meta, along with Beetle and Grim. So Beetle and Grim is our next champions, and there are 2 champions in 1. Beetle and Grim. The first thing they get right away is their tag team ultimate. So we're gonna tag him out. Oh, he's not even in. Hold on. Let's pull Sesaspia out. There we go. This is Beetle. If we want to hit the ultimate, we're gonna tag him out. Boom! He jumps in. We've got so much speed you can't really tell, but he jumps in, and then we've got Grim. Right. So you can tag them in and out with their ultimate. It is the first ability you get, so you want to use them. They have these, we'll get to long rest in a minute, but you want to make sure you have certain ones in at certain times and leave them out for long periods of time because it actually increases their buffs. Get buff is the first one, increases the damage of champions within 2 slots of Beetle, so the other one, whereas, because he's your support, Whereas Grim is the DPS, so increases damage of Grim for each barbarian in the formation, right? So every ability is going to have like 2 effects, and it's going to depend on who's there in there, right? Special order: Beetle damages an enemy that is not at full health. That enemy drops more gold. Fantastic for gold find formations. Enemies damaged by Grim take more damage until they're killed. This is a debuff, right? So interestingly, this makes him a DPS that provides a support debuff. So regardless, this is actually, in my opinion, the better support character is Grim, because this debuff is kind of a big deal. Again, another one of the core factors in the current click debuff meta. Long Rest increases the effect of these other abilities per stack. The Resting Champion's buff increases by 1 stack every 10 seconds, while the active champion stacks reduced by 1 every 10 seconds. When you swap, everything gets reset. And we're going to look at that in a second. But specializations, you're either affecting Beetles get buff for each champ with a dex score of 17 or higher. Or you're going for smarter people, so increasing Beetles get buff by 100% for each champion with an int score of 16 or higher. So depending on how you're building your formation out and who you're building it around, you pick the one that's going to get you the most. With Chip Away and Strongman contest, this is going to be Grim Special Order by 100%, or you're going to go, this is kind of the DPS one, it adds another stack for a strength of 18 or higher. This one's real specific. Most of the time you're just going Chip Away. Not to be confused with Swing Away. Yay, movies references, yay. All right. And that's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so let's go over here and we'll take a look. I'm talking faster because we've already passed the first hour and I'm about halfway through. That's not bad. Still. Okay, Long Rest. So this is how you're going to see the Long Rest stacks stack up. They're going to build up. They're going to build up. There's nothing currently active because Beetle wasn't in long enough to really build any. But now that we've got 100, if I go tag team them out, you're going to see that if we come back down here now, you're building up new stacks, and these are ticking down, and it gives you the bonus, like the total amount that's going down. It shows you the timers. So every time you swap them in and out, they're going to have stacks that build up and start ticking down. But if you leave them in, like if you put one in at the start of a run, and then you run the entire run, you end up with thousands of stacks and an incredibly nice buffs, and that tends to be how you want to manage Beetle and Grim. So when you start off your run, figure out who you want the biggest stacks on towards the end of the run, and then start it with the other person so that they build those stacks up, right? They get the usual support DPS type stuff with some self-damage, some all-champs damage. They get some gold, and then they have their specials. They have a lot of very specific specialization ones, so get buff, special order, long rest. I tend to stick to special order and long rest because that's where I kind of put my focus. But they do have, all of the bonuses available as usual. Okay, get all those indicators to go away. Who is next up? We are 11 through. We're not to our second Evergreen champion yet, though. So, next up, we have another member of the Acquisitions Incorporated, the founding member, Almandran. Let's get him out of the formation. I almost pulled Morgaine for him, but that, let's get him in there with Morgaine. All right. Omen comes in as a support and gold find champion, which should make lots of sense to everyone, right? If he hadn't come into the game with a gold find tag, I think everybody would have revolted. Real quick, do I have his? Yes, I do. His ultimate gets a lot of use. Sometimes it's been broken in the past. I think it's currently working more functionally now. But he pulls all of these Spirit Guardians out, and then they rush to enemies and blow up those enemies and do tons of damages. It's pretty cool. I like it. Can we go to the end and not die now? Probably not. I haven't really built a formation. I've just thrown people in. So his ability, Shadow Council, increases champ damage if you're adjacent to him. So he wants to be close to you. Champion of Tymora, every time he attacks, and this is the indicator we're seeing out here on the screen right now that just showed up. Every time he attacks, he blesses all adjacent champions as a Champion of Tymora, which increases their damage. But then that can spread throughout the formation. you know, we'll talk about that in a second. So, contractual obligations. Every time a champion in the column in front of Omen attacks, they fulfill an obligation. When he reaches 100 obligations, he grants a 100% gold fine buff for each champion in the column in front of him for 30 seconds. So this gets used a lot and actually turned one of the reasons that Zaka farms are now a lot more active farming, because you want to fire off like Freely's ultimate. Oh, we didn't talk about Freely's ultimate. It basically applies all the stacks, each of his different stacks of Lucky of Yondala. So you fire off that ultimate right as contractual obligations goes off, and you get all the gold, basically. Now, with his specialization, we're going to modify how his abilities works. So, long lost friends, his Shadow Council applies to non-adjacent champions, and is increased by 85% for each champion of Tymora in the formation. Close allies continues to do adjacent and buffs 100% for each champion of Tymora. And then Assassin, it only applies to champions furthest from him and is buffed by 125%. So this obviously gives the highest buff, but you have to have a very specific formation for this, or at least you have to build your formation in a very specific way to make this happen. So keep that in mind. I'm just going to pick close allies. But as you can see, it matters based off who's a champion of Tymora. Well, right now, everyone is, right? Because even though it only applies to adjacent, it has spread based off attack speed throughout the formation. We'll show that here in a second. Let me get him maxed out. So that was contractual obligations. That's close allies. Known associates. The duration of Champion of Tymora is doubled on champions with the AC Inc. or C Team affiliation. So this is kind of his synergy with other members of AC Inc. and the C Team. The only AC Inc. members currently are Jim and Morgane, along with Omen. But there's the full C Team roster in the game. And that is everything for him. Let me see if this shows it over here, if I have to go to a different champion. Yeah, I got to go to a different champion. All right. So if we go over here and we look at incoming buffs, here we go. Champion of Tymora. It's based off when she attacks. I guess maybe this information isn't in the game. Did they not put this in? So Champion of Tymora spreads. So every time Omen attacks, he blesses adjacent champions. I guess I'm going to have to go get this from one of my guides. Sometimes they make champions and they don't necessarily put all the information from the champion spotlight into the game so that you know how it works. So whenever Champion of Tymora, whenever Omen attacks, he recruits all adjacent champions to be champions of Tymora for 3 seconds. It buffs their damage, but it also causes any other champions adjacent to them to become a champion of Tymora when they attack. So as long as someone adjacent to the people adjacent to you attack while they have that 3-second buff, they become champions of Tymora too. So it's this spreading effect based around attack speed and how often they're attacking. And it can spread throughout the whole formation. As you can see here, everyone has it, which means I'm maxing out his buff, basically, based off this formation. Which is what you want to do, right? And now we come to our second Evergreen champion. We're going to come up slot 10. She's slot 10. Alcoria Stone. No. Yeah. It's Alcoria Stone Marrow, right? I don't know. I think that's her name. It's not in here. All right. Well, anyway. Alcoria is a mage from Waterdeep. She is part of the Watchful Order. You earn her at the very end. She's earned at the very, very, very end of the Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign down in Undermountain. She is a support champion. She really only cares about people who have base magic attacks. Let's get into that. Spellcaster School. Alcoria gains a stack of Spellcaster School for each champion with a magical base attack in the formation. And each stack increases the damage multiplicatively, right? So the more magical attackers, magic base attack people you have in your formation, the bigger the buff she's going to give out. She specifically prefers to be used in the Waterdeep campaign in the sense that she's going to give you a buff if you are actually there. And this is supported by an item. So, I mean, they've gone all in on Alcoria is the person you want to use when you're doing Waterdeep stuff. So Waterdeep and magic users, right? And now we get to Watchful Order, which is kind of the key. Like her Spellcaster School is the core of her kit, but it's modified by Watchful Order. So Watchful Order gets based on the stacks that they're referring to here are based off the number of magic base attack users in your formation. The more, the better, right? So at 3 stacks, she increases, basically increases attack speed because she drops it by 0.5 seconds. At 5, which I feel is the cutoff, if you can't hit 5, you're probably better with somebody else in your formation. At 5, she increases positional formation ability effects by all of those magic attack champions by 25% for each stack. 7, though, I mean, you want to maximize everything, but 5 is kind of the cutoff. 7 starts getting into some nice bonuses where each time a champion counting towards Spellcaster School attacks, there's a 50% chance that their base attack cooldown immediately resets. So just all the damage possibilities. And then 9 increases base value of Spellcaster School by 200%. So yeah, 9 is very hard to get to, and I mean, you can do it, but you're giving up a lot to get there currently. Maybe not the best idea, but if you can get above 5, she tends to come in pretty cool. Pretty cool. Her base attack is magic missiles. As she levels up, she gets more magic missiles. I'm not entirely sure why, because she's not a DPS champ, but they did it anyway. Her ultimate's real cool, though, because you get to choose either damage or crowd control. The damage is that she summons a shield guardian, and basically it comes out and does all the lightning stuff. Or you can summon her urchin friends, Nat, Jinx, and Squiddy. And they basically do a bunch of CC stuff with some knockbacks and some stuns. I'm going to do the shield guardian here because I want to throw her in and show it off because it's cool. We'll see. Yeah, some of the speed's worn off, so it'll actually appear. So we'll throw her all the way in the back here, and then we'll fire it off. The nice thing about Alcoria is that she doesn't really care where you place her in a formation. She's just going to buff based off those other abilities. And here comes the shield guardian. See, he's just pew-pewing all over the place. Now, if we were at a point where I had built a formation that was actually damaged, he'd have been clearing the screen, but I didn't. This is just for demonstration purposes. All right. We're into the final stretch, folks. Final stretch. 6 champions left. Speaking of doing the zaps with things, let's bring in... Where is she? Where's my Lazaps? There's Lazaps. So Lazaps is our goblin artificer who focuses on taking and support. She looks so cool. She actually has 2 different configurations art-wise. This is her I'm not getting hit by anyone look. If we put her up into the front, swap her with Briv, and then let's go back up here. You will see once she starts getting hit, she goes into full tank mode and drops her armor down. Oh, it doesn't show it here, but she drops her armor down in front of her face, and her shield gets real big. Yeah, we can't really see it, but this shield expands, and this part rotates down. It's pretty cool. She's basically like Iron Man, and she just died because I don't have her leveled up all the way. All right, so her power armor gives her her survivability. It's also going to do some other stuff here. So power armor gains 1 stack for every second that she's not under attack. Caps at 100, and she gains health based off each stack. So when she's not under attack, she builds up her health. As she starts to come under attack, her health drops, not only from the damage she's taking, but just by being hit. She's got Fear of the Small, so she increases the damage of all champions that are, shorter champions, the dwarves, gnomes, halflings, kobolds, or goblins currently, for each small champion in the formation. So there is some synergy here with, say, like Ishii, who also likes to has a specialization about short folks. At some point there may be a whole full-on short people formation or short champion formation. I don't know that we're quite there yet, but you can run it for fun. Tiny Bulwark, when the Zaps is under attack, she consumes stacks of her power armor, but increases the effect of Fear of the Small. This is basically like those power armor stacks are what she uses to fire off other abilities, and this is the first one of those. Shield of Sharn is her health share. Lightning Launcher is her other ability with stacks of power armors. But so when she's under attack by at least 5 enemies, she consumes stacks and activates her Lightning Launcher, targeting one of the enemies attacking her and striking all enemies in a line, causing them to take more damage. So that's her massive debuff that she fires off. So she buffs and she debuffs. And her ultimate affects her charges. So she can either recharge if she's used up a bunch, or she can overcharge. Oh, that's not it. Where is it? Here I am. We're currently at overcharge. So we have more than 20 power armor stacks. So she overcharges her power armor, preventing it from gaining any more stacks, but increasing the effect of Tiny Bulwark and Lightning Launcher by a big amount, right? 5 times for 30 seconds. If she's under 20 stacks, she recharges her stacks. And then, like, I believe it says she doesn't lose any for a while after that. Does it say down here? The words are too small. Nope. Oh, and we need to spec choice her out here. So her specs, Stolen Power increases max stacks of power armor, so it'll go all the way up to 200. I prefer this one usually, because she consumes those as a resource to do cool things with. And it also increases her health, so it makes her tanky and lets her use those abilities more often. Team player, it makes Tiny Bulwark and Lightning Launchers trigger when any champion is under attack. So this is if you're not using her in the tanking row, if you're using her more as a support, that's going to fire off. That's going to be the better option. And then Zapper basically maximizes Lightning Launcher by making it need only one enemy to fire off Lightning Launcher, and that's the debuff. So this is kind of for bosses, right? Because when you're on a boss level, normally Zapper wouldn't go off and you wouldn't have that debuff. This makes sure that it does. She does have a cool basic attack, if you're seeing it on the screen here. Every few attacks, normally she just runs out and punches someone and does some lightning damage, but every few attacks she's going to actually shoot her arm out and do a get over here moment and pull an enemy, if they weren't dying, pull an enemy to her. It's every 5th attack. She uses her grapple. And then, yeah, that's the spec, and that's it, yeah. And then she's got the usual feats. So we've got the all champs damage, the health. Oh, she actually doesn't have overwhelm feats. I mean, she's got 20 overwhelm, but there are other people with 20 overwhelm usually have overwhelm feats. So maybe we'll see that in the future. But she can buff Fear of the Small, and then health or all champs damage. There we go. And now it brings us to Toragar. Toragar is the big badass Minotaur. He really is so cool. Look at that. Look at that big boy. I'm a big fan of Minotaur champions. We need more. He is a DPS support, Barbarian, Dark Order affiliation. So Archon, Krull, and Toragar make up the Dark Order currently. They do have affiliation bonuses, but, you know, to be honest, they don't necessarily matter a whole lot. Currently, maybe that'll change in the future. So Markings of a Zealot is kind of the core of his kit. So whenever he or an adjacent champion kills an enemy, he gains a Zealot stack. And yes, this is like Zorbu, but it's also like Black Viper in the sense that he's going to have some other things that modify that later, and it matters on a run. Preach increases the damage of all other evil champions per those Zealot stacks that he has. So again, kind of like Zorbu, except it's buffing others, right? So this is a support ability. Zorbu's buffs himself, which is one of the things that makes Zorbu a little overpowered. So Toragar not quite as strong as Zorbu, but, you know, similar. Blood Rage, this is kind of a neat part of his kit. Whenever his Zealot stacks reach a multiple of 50, he enters a Blood Rage for 30 seconds. If he fails to kill an enemy, he adds a Mark of Tiamat to them, increasing the damage taken from all champions. And then we're going to see down below, there's some other additional benefits that come with this based off the stacks that he gets. Excuse me. His ultimate is a Bull Rush. He just runs off, boom, and smacks people and leaves a fire trail behind. It's neat. If we weren't at super speed, it probably would have looked cooler. Tiamat's Word for spec choice. He gains a Zealot stack when any evil champion kills an enemy. This is more the use when you're farming stacks. specialization. And the Tiamat's Rage is the one I would use the rest of the time because it increases the duration of his Blood Rage, and it triggers whenever he uses ultimate. So instead of having to wait for the stacks to hit a multiple of 50, you can just on-demand it with his ultimate, and that makes it real strong. His Dark Order Synergy increases the effect of Preach for each Dark Order member adjacent to him. There's only 2 of those, though. Now, if we come over here and we look at his Blood Rage, here's where we see the stack bonuses. So these are the... this is where he's kind of like Black Viper, where she has thresholds when she meets, she gets bonuses. For him, when he hits 250 stacks, total, these are the total persistent stacks. The Mark of Tiamat will stun enemies for 2 enemies when it's left on them. At 2500, it adds a small EOE to his base attack at half damage. At 25,000, enemies with the Mark of Tiamat have their attack cooldown increased by 1 second, so thus increasing survivability of her formation. 250,000 stacks, he reduces his base attack cooldown by 1 second, so he's out there hitting more often, which is nice. I mean, it is a full second. It's not like a percentage, so that's going to drop him down quite a bit. And then at 2.5 million stacks, which I haven't reached yet, the damage bonus from the Mark of Tiamat increases 200% multiplicatively. So he does get some nice bonuses from that overall. Feats. Self DPS, and then, all champs damage. He does have his Dark Order ones, which, I don't know. I don't know that they're the greatest, but he does get them both. Hopefully at some point in the future, they'll make... kind of the grouping of a Dark Order work better together, but until they do, he will wait in the wings. Next up, who do we want to pull out for this? We're going to take Briv out, and we're going to talk about another niche champion that I'm a huge fan of. That's Esmerelda Avenir. She is our human fighter wizard, but if we want to be real specific about it, she is a Vistana monster hunter. So she comes to us from Barovia, or at least she spent a lot of time there fighting Strahd. Her big thing, she actually has a magic base damage, which is interesting for a fighter wizard, but hey. And then her ultimate increases damage based off debuffs that are on enemies. And, there are a lot of debuffs in the game if you haven't been listening. So right away... Devil's Playthings increases damage of champions in Esmerelda's column against undead creatures by a large amount. So she's basically buffing based off a specific type, much like some other champions we know. This can be modified by her spec choices, and we'll get there in a moment. Training Montage, though, this is the fun one. She marks enemies as she trains the champions. This can also be modified by a spec choice. Pause. Esmeralda marks every 3rd enemy that spawns with this debuff. Once marked, the target gains 1 stack every 3 seconds to a max of 10 stacks for each champions in Esmeralda's column. For each stack, champions deal additional damage against the target. So this is a stacking debuff against her marked enemies. And then prepare. She marks every enemy she attacks with this debuff. If the enemy has armor or hits base health, and this is what I love about Esmeralda. This is where her niche is, in my opinion. Champions in Esmeralda's column remove an extra chunk when dealing damage to them. So basically, if it's just a regular enemy, their max health is reduced by 50%. So when you're fighting those hit-based and armor-based bosses, and it's always so slow to kind of chunk through all their armor to get them dead, she doubles the effect of every attack you make. So if you're just a single attacker, like, say, a Zorbu, you're going to take 2 chunks off. So instead of taking 50 hits to kill that boss, it's going to only take 25. But if you're a multi-attacker, like, say, a Hitch, who can throw like up to 3, he can stab, and then he can throw 3 daggers, and those daggers can bounce up to like 5 times. You just basically demolish things that have hit-based stuff or armor when you have Esmeralda in your party with them. And then she has parry. The first time a non-boss enemy attacks, the attack misses. So, a little bit of survivability coming off of Esmeralda. Threat tracking, she tracks the undead creatures the champions kill, increases the effect of Devil's Playthings for each undead tracked. This is just in a single adventure. This doesn't stack, so it's not persistent. And then we have her specs, which modify things. So she can modify what effectively her favorite enemy is. She can stay with undead. She can switch to fiends. She can switch to humanoids. She can switch to monstrosities. And she maintains her count in between those. With her second spec choice, she can kind of modify how she does things. So she can mark every enemy that spawns. To be honest, this is basically what I go with every time, because otherwise it's every third enemy. And I want those marks on all of them. You can do We've Trained for this, which is her training montage and her Devil's Playthings now affect all champions. So instead of just in her column, she can buff everyone, which is nice if you're doing, like, say, well, she's in a slot with Deacon. So if you don't have Deacon and you're trying to do a speed run through like Mad Wizard, you'd go with We Trained this with Esmerelda, because then everyone takes multiple hits off all of those barricades. And then he's still out there is maximizes Devil Playthings. So this, though, I mean, you could run the risk of ending up with a boss that isn't marked. So if you're willing to play that RNG game, you're going to get a lot more damage out of this. But I tend to go just with the one that puts the debuff on everything. So if you do get her in her niche where she is, say, against like undead or whatever, or one of her other focus things, and you're dealing with that kind of boss, and they have armor, so say like, I don't know, Dragonbait's boss, Valindra Shadowmantle, where she is undead and armored, you can just rip right through that stuff. Or Alcoria's boss, which is a Neothelid, which isn't one of her favorite enemies, but it is armored. We did that with Ashara and took off all the chunks with every hit. It was pretty amazing. So again, in her element, she is fantastic. That's all the stuff she gets out of her kit. She does have the generic all champs damage, but then she modifies her different stuff like training montage or Devil's Plaything or threat tracking. However you want to get specific with her, she can do that for you. We're almost there. Time for everybody's friend. Oh, all the way down here, Penelope Halfpint. Oh, hey, I clicked. Why didn't it go? How do I still have Melf in? That's a nice bug. Can I put Penelope and Melf in? Huh. That's not supposed to happen. All right, so apparently Penelope wanted to be friends with Melf today. So Penelope's first buff is Have You Met My Friends? Whenever Penelope attacks an enemy and doesn't kill it, for the next 30 seconds, all champs deal more damage against them. Pretty fantastic. She gets multiple spec choices. And it's all based around friends. So keep your friends close. You get a 60% bonus for each good champion in the formation. Keep your future friends closer, not enemies. Everyone's a future. If you're not a friend, you're a future friend to Penelope. And this is a 40% for each evil champion. So you can get buffs. Obviously, she prefers good based people, but you could still buff everybody else. And then everybody gets to be friends, 20% for each champion, just generally. So if you've got a mix of good and evil and neutral, you could go that way. And then her second one modifies her base attack. She can either add, she has a knockback on her base attack, but she can make it even bigger against non-boss enemies, and increases her own damage, which she's a support champion, but she likes to thwack things. For a while, she was super crazy DPS, but now she's more calm. So minor eruption, her base attack now causes minor eruption on the enemy she hits, dealing damage in a small radius and leaving difficult terrain under them. Generally, this is where I prefer to go. I like the AoE with a little bit of damage, and honestly, it's a big deal for Freely. So using her with Freely, these two combine real well. Even better than Zorbu if you're doing, say, click debuff. Her ability Chewinga Mask. When the formation is under attack, she dons her mask and calls her friend to an aid. And then lots of things happen. So based off their tags, either she throws out a healing charm, which she heals adjacent tank champions every single second for a large amount, or she does Tools for the Job, where she increases the damage of all champions for each adjacent healing, support, or gold find champion. So You either want her healing by placing her up like adjacent to the tank, or you want her like in the middle of a formation with lots of those type of tag champions around her. So healing, support, gold find, because then that's going to maximize her buffage. With story time, each champion within 2 slots of her, whenever they kill an enemy, that adds a stack of story time. The stacks of story time modify the buffs from the Chewing Gum Mask. And yeah, we did all that. Her ultimate is basically like a major eruption, which does all the things. If you come over here, though, you can watch the stacks and you can see how they all build up when she's doing them. They'll tell you whether they're active or inactive. Currently, they're inactive because the formation isn't under attack. If it was, she would drop her mask, and her friend would sit on her shoulder, and she would go, go wild. So that's Penelope. Again, the usual assortment of things. She's got like a healing feat, but she's also got her buffage and her modifications for her abilities and some all champs damage. She is your friendly druid, Circle of the Moon. I'm going to miss Silver and Steel. It's only got a few episodes left. If you've been following it, if you're not caught up, because the finales are coming soon, which makes me sad because I like that show a lot. Next up, Lucius. Where's Lucius? Here we go. Fraley slot. I'm like, I remember him somewhere. Lucius is another one of the final member of the Heroes of Erois. He has an interesting skin, if you haven't seen it. The Fey Lucius skin. Let's pop that one on. Fabulous. All right. He is pure DPS, so he is the primary DPS for your Heroes of Erois formation. If you're running Lucius, you really want multiple members. You don't necessarily need all members of the Heroes of Erois, but his bonus he gets from his synergy really capitalizes on having other members contributing to the pool, so you really want to do that. He has base attacks that he throws out, and these are modified. They switch every time. If you'll notice, they're rotating over here. Ray of Frost, Acid Splash. So, Arcane Chromat, Acid. Enemies hit by Acid Splash take more damage. That's nice, right? But this is damage over time. And then Arcane Chromat Cold, they slow them down and they take more damage. So, one is a dot and one is a debuff with a slow. Elemental Adept, and this is kind of the key to his kit. So when an enemy is affected by both of those, so when you attack one and then you Acid Splash and then you freeze it, they explode. They're stunned in place and they explode. They take a bunch of damage. It consumes both of those debuffs, and it spreads the acid dot to nearby enemies, so that then when you throw out the Ray of Frost again, everyone explodes. It's this nice chain thing, right? Each explosion increases elemental depth stacks by 1. And that's basically, everything is built kind of around that rotation of abilities into Elemental Adept. Elemental Adept is what gets buffed by all the things, right? His synergy, he contributes 100% per stack of Elemental Adept. Again, like I said, that's the thing. And then the damage of Arcane Chromat Acid is increased by the total pool. So again, you want to kind of, it's all built around Elemental Adept. So he has 3 different specializations, and they kind of, they're all based off Elemental Adept, and they modify how it does damage. You can straight up get a bonus of 25% to all the explosions from the beginning. You can increase the maximum stacks by 50, which gives you the most potential damage, but you do have to wait for it to ramp up all the way. So that would be a 50% bonus, because you start off at 100 stacks. So 25% bonus is like, once you get to, at any point along the way, it's like having 25% more, but it would be like having 25 more stacks at the end, whereas this is 50 more stacks, but you do have to ramp all the way up there to get that bonus. A Lingering Chill, only half of his stacks are cleared when he changes areas, because he drops all the stacks every time he moves. So if you want just a flat 25% bonus to everything, this is kind of the general, I would say, your general run. And this is like if you have a survivable tank and you really want to max out the damage on a boss. I haven't really figured out when I would use that yet, honestly. Sometimes that happens with specialization choices, where you're like, would you ever really use that? There's probably use for it. I just haven't figured it out yet. And his ultimate, which we're going to fire off here in a minute. I want to actually jump up to a higher level. His ultimate basically applies both of his abilities to everyone prismatic spray. So they all pop right away. See, it just goes real quick. Bam! Hits everyone on the screen and they all explode. I like it a lot. But that ultimate is basically if you've been using Lucius and you wanted to figure out how do I get his achievement quicker, put a familiar on his ultimate at your wall, and he will just hit everyone with it every time it goes off, and you'll build up stacks real quick. Finally, we come to a champion I'm going to be real honest with. I haven't spent a lot of time with Bailoth yet, because Bailoth came out over the winter break. So he is literally, I haven't spent a lot of time with him because he's the most recent champion. But he was also kind of broken for a while. But he has been mostly fixed. So we're going to dive into him and look at what's going on. So Bailoth is a drow sorcerer. This is Bailoth the Entertainer, or Bailoth Baratil, however, master of the Black Pits, whatever you want to call him. Bailoth is one of the hosts of Improvised Champions. He's played by Mark Meir. So Improvised Champions with Mark, Christina, and the Masked Lord Havant every Monday afternoon. But Bailoth comes to us from that. Bailoth appeared in some of the Vidya games. So he is going to be a chaotic evil. He's going to do support and gold. Enemies hit by his chain lightning drop more gold when they're killed. So chain lightning, he fires. This is his base attack. Fires his bolt at a random enemy, and then it arcs around up to 4 times. So if we watch, let me throw him in here. Oh, I did throw him in. Never mind. Apparently I removed a champion I didn't need to remove. There. Okay, so he's shooting out attacks. It's going to bounce around. We've got a lot of stuff on the screen, so it's going to be a little hard to see. Let's go back a little bit. And then he's got lots of animation effects, which we're going to see here. Cause for celebration. Enemies killed by champions in the column ahead of or behind Bailoth explode into magical paper confetti. Because why not, folks? This is D&D. Dealing damage and slowing enemies near them by 50% for 10 seconds. So... yeah, I mean, not only does he have like a chain lightning effect, but he also creates AoE effects. So kind of in a sense like Krull has his Traitor, right? Where if you attack an enemy that has Traitor on it, it does AoE damage around them. This is similar, right? So, but it's to all champions. It's a very specific formation ability. Column ahead of or behind. Yeah, they explode. Do lots of damage and slow enemies. The damage done ignores debuffs and is either half of the hit that killed them or 1/4 of their max health, with whichever is higher. So that means, because you get the whichever is higher, that means if you have slowly whittled down one enemy, and it took a lot just to kill it, suddenly you get to do 25% of their max health as one burst of damage to everything around it when it explodes, which could potentially be nice. This effect can chain if the explosion kills an enemy. Because why not, folks? Let's just have magical confetti everywhere. And when it does go off, it's just all over the place. It's all over the place. Morbid excitement, because, you know, killing things should be fun, right? That's kind of Bailoth's kit. All champions in column in front or behind Bailoth do more damage per morbid excitement stack. To me, this is one of the cores of his kit. We'll get to the other one here in a second. He loses 10% of his stacks every 10 seconds, and the stacks cap at 20 to start with. But there are ways to modify that. One of that is his specializations, but there's also an item which modifies it as well. So having lots of stacks on him is super important. You gain stacks with when an enemy drops more gold due to paid partially with pain. When an enemy explodes in confetti. When a chain reaction kills an enemy due to cause for celebration. So that's when you blow something up and then it blows something else up. When a champion in the column in front of Bailoth takes damage, so you can get stacks if he's right behind the tanks. And then if a champion dies, he gets tons of stacks. Because he just likes death, folks. He doesn't care if it's your team or theirs. The other core of his kit, in terms of... I mean, Morbid Excitement is kind of the core of his kit. in general terms. But Generous Jin is real strong. Bailoth's Jin servant Najim will bring any champion that dies back to life at 1 HP and make them immune to all damage for 20 seconds. For as long as the resurrected champion lives, the party's damage is increased by 300%. So, if you one by one kill off every person in your party and let Najim bring them back, and then don't swap out champions at all, and just use that party, you get 300% more damage per champion in your formation. Yeah, that's a big deal. It takes a lot of finagling to make happen, but it's a real big buff. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to go through all of that work, then you want to do the show must go on. Because this increases the bonus for those champions. If you're not going to do all that work, you're going to choose one of the other two. I prefer Overexcited because it increases the max stacks of Morbid Excitement. But technically, once you get a high item level, you might not necessarily need this because, maxing out those stacks may become a lot more difficult. I'll show you why in a moment. And then, so Bailoth's Birthday Party increases the cause for celebration related stacking values by 100%, increases the damage bonus by 100%. I'm going to pick that one right now just because as long as he's working correctly, my stack should be super high. Or my max stack should be super high. So let me just make sure. Oh, and there's ultimate is now that's an entrance. We're going to do that here in a moment. Boom, where is it? Where is it? Right here. Now that's an entrance. And Najim streaks across the field to deal massive damage to all enemies, pushing ones that survive back slightly, but more importantly, increasing his excitement stacks to max. So let's go over here under formation buffs. Morbid Excitement. I get 6.59 EO6 more damage per stack. My stats currently stack at 429. So that's why I said I'm not worried about doing the other one. It would be over 1,000 if I had picked that other spec choice, which, yeah, I probably still should do. But 429, this is what it's going to look like. Let's go over here. Let's get Najim out when some enemies that aren't instantly dying. And we'll show you the kind of pushback. Oh, that was real quick. I had too much speed to even see that. That's unfortunate. Anyway, if we come over here now, he's got max stacks. So if I'd chosen that middle one, I'd have like 1,200 max stacks. He'd have some crazy buff. But even with 400, I'm in the EO9s. So things can get wild. But ultimately, you want to get wild with the Generous Jin. You want people to die and have these crazy, insane buff values. It only works once per champion. And again, if you pull that champion out with Generous Jin, it's going to lose it. So, yeah, don't do that. That, believe it or not, folks, took us an hour and 40 minutes, but we did it. 19 champions, hour and 40 minutes. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to do real quick, like 15 minutes of Q&A after I get my voice back. So give me one moment while we switch screens and I drink some water and I'll be right back. And we're back with the Q&A. Don't think I didn't see that comment about you betting against me. I see that. How dare you? Yeah, always bet on the Wookiee or the Dwarf, whichever happened to be on any given day. All right. I think I'm not going to talk for the next like at least 4 or 5 hours after we're done with this, because my voice is breaking, and it isn't just my my allergies. All right, I'm going to go back. So if you ask questions at any point in time, I'm going to try to answer them all now. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Baldy, what does Overwhelm do? Overwhelm is a stat that basically reduces... so when you get overwhelmed, basically once you have more enemies that are on you than this, whatever this number is, you start taking more damage. You take 10% more damage per enemy above your overwhelm. So the higher your overwhelm, the more enemies you can take without taking increased damage. So that's why people like to, like Briv has high overwhelm, which helps him tank a little longer, and along with his healing and his damage reduction that he gets, he's pretty tanky. Others tend to start around 20, some are 25, and some you can manipulate up super high. Let me see. Wait, they gave us a Melf out for Christmas? Yes. Where did I miss that? It was in the newsletter. So if you didn't sign up for the newsletter, you don't get it. Sign up for the newsletter. You get lots of free stuff, folks. Augmented support spell. In regards to that, does Warden have a gender? No, they do not. Sentry seems to register as female. Yes. Warden has no opinions on the matter. So they are they. Whereas Sentry has chosen to be female. It's their choice. Isn't Mass Appeal always the better pick for Nova, since it increases the Aurora synergy pool more, effectively giving Discovery a larger boost than the flat? It's going to depend on your party, right? If you have if you're using Aroas members and everyone else that isn't an Aroas member is high int, then maybe, but then even then maybe not, because you don't count the Aroas members towards that pool. So it's situational. It's truly situational. I tend to just run Discovery because I don't necessarily focus on having lots of people that would have the high int thing. These are one of the things that when you get real finicky, I mean, I was trying to cover this, like, very generally speaking, all of them, because I knew if I got real into details, we weren't going to make it in 2 hours. But there's always going to be some edge cases for all the champions that you can manipulate to do even crazier stuff with. I kind of talked a little bit about that with Freely, because Freely's the one that people are really manipulating a lot. But I didn't necessarily go into that with everybody. In your view, is Freely stronger than Catti-Brie? Yes. I mean, it's so subjective based off your items, but more often than not, even with bad items, yeah. Freely's just because of the way his if you've got a party and you're choosing the correct things and he's going to stack up lots of those potential instances, then yes, he ends up being stronger. Is Freely very dependent on his gear? I don't think so, no. Like Krull, I think he would be fine without lots of gear, but is the gear going to be nice if you get it? Absolutely. Please talk about optimal formation place for Omen. I mean, optimally, he would be in the center of a formation surrounded by lots of people that prevent enemies from getting to him because he wants to stay alive. No, but really because he wants to spread Champion of Tymora as much as possible. And because his buffs are related to Champion of Tymora, you would want them around lots of people. Like right now, Melf doesn't have Champion of Tymora, but that's because this is a visual bug. Melf is not actually in my formation. Penelope is. It's just funny seeing him still in there. This is what happens when you run lots of speed potions, folks. So, if you're not able to spread Tymora to everyone with him somewhere off to the side in a formation, if you can get him into more of the middle, more people are going to have Champion of Tymora, and then he's going to have bigger buffs going out. So in relation to, I'm going to put this in relation to Freely. What determines favor when completing? The amount of gold you've earned. It's not necessarily how far you've got, but the amount of, the further you get, the more gold you earned, but there are ways to earn lots of gold even if you don't go super far. So the further you go, like you see up here, we've earned lots and lots of gold. So we've got an E31 favor increase, but if I were to throw Freely in with his, or if I were to make sure that, well, he has been in, but if I had him in from the beginning, we would be able to get even more. Like, see, this bonus off to the side here is coming from Freely. He would have had even more if I'd had him in all the way from the start. How do you tell what type of base attack a champion has? I'm going to relate this to Alcoria, since you need to know magic base attacks. Right here, this is a sword. That means it's a melee base attack. This is like a little bolt of magic, so that means it's a fire base attack. And this is an arrow, which means it's a ranged physical attack. Some champions can have multiple. I'm actually going to show you that so that you can see, because I'm going to go to somebody who I know has multiple. Originally, Hitch starts off with just a melee, but then he gains a thrown dagger and he gains the ranged one. Super nice, right? So, it can vary. Archon starts off as melee, and when he gets hit by 16 or more enemies, it turns into magical. And when it turns into magical for him, he then adds to Spellcaster School for Alcoria. How do you get new characters like these? Every 3 weeks, roughly, for the almost like clockwork, every 3 weeks, a new event happens in Idle Champions. One's going to start this coming Wednesday, the 13th, when we're going to get Talon Oren, a new tiefling rogue who's joining our party. And I think the neatest thing about this is they are using bringing in a champion who is in a combat wheelchair, which was created not too long ago. If you've watched Critical Role, you've seen they have a character there in one. But this is, by the creator of the combat wheelchair themselves. They have brought in their character, Talon Oren, to join Idle Champions. They look super cool. We're going to have to wait. I like their mechanics. We're going to have to wait and see just how powerful those mechanics are. They're going to be a rogue champion in slot 2. So down here with these, they don't heal. So they're going to be like Kreidel. They're going to come in with, it's pure support though. So we're going to see a nice pure support champion in slot 2, which I'm excited because usually pure support means, potentially bigger buffs because they're not splitting up. They're supporting between just a buff and some heals and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to that. Where do you input the codes from the streams? Right up here. You go to the shop, you go to unlock a code chest, and the cryptex opens, and you punch it in right there, or you copy paste it. I prefer copy pasting. There is also a new list of 2021 hidden codes that was posted in the Discord, and there's a post on the Reddit. That's actually when I flipped over here. Boom. It's no, here. No. Dang it. I must have left that screen. Hold on. Let's go back. Over on the subreddit. Hidden Combination Series 4, 2021 edition. This looks blank, but there's already some that have been solved. And I think one got posted in the chat. Yeah, here we go. So there's 5 already that have been solved. Head over there for more information. This is a community feature. Like, you've got to go solve those yourselves, folks. We hunt for those. How do you solve them? Well, you look at the clue, which currently the only clue we have is that the names of the chests, like who the chests are for, and then you have to find something about them that makes sense in a phrase, and that's how you get new stuff. How will you place Bailoth in end wall formation with Overin, Averin, and the other usual suspects? I mean, he wants to be. Where is he? Like you said, he wants to be like ahead of or behind, right? For cause for acceleration, yeah. The DPS needs to be either ahead of or behind. So depending on what campaign you're in or what event formation you're in, you want before or behind, and that works for morbid excitement as well. There's one that's only one direction. Which was it? Maybe I'm mistaken. Yeah, so ahead of or behind. So it's really going to depend on the actual formation and what you're doing. Like you would need to, that's the kind of thing you're going to want to ask in the Discord and the hashtag formations channel, because you're going to need to say, well, what formation am I working in, and what other champions am I working in, and yeah. Oh, man, there we go. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, so ahead of or behind. I wasn't doing anything except for looking at these abilities. I mean, you asked me that question, I'm going to go look at the ability. Does Esmerelda's armor debuff stack with Bindon's Crash and Bash to do 4 damage? It should, because it should do double. It is what it says, right? Well, it says an extra chunk, so it may only do one more. And Binwin automatically does an extra, so it probably goes, instead of 2, it would do 3. But Binwin attacks multiple times, so it would be groups of 3, so I think 3 every attack, and he would do multiple. Does Esmeralda's armor debuff work against bosses? So the armor chunkage thing, if it's an armored or a hit-based boss, yeah. If it's not an armored or hit-based boss, then it reduces the health by 50%. And her regular debuff that she throws out as part of her other abilities under training montage, like under pause, yeah. That works on everything. Yep. I really like Toragar's look, so I want to make a party with him. Do you have a tip for me? I'm new. The tip is farm up his stacks. So basically use him a lot, put him in a formation where he's kind of in the middle, and everyone around him can get credit for killing things, and farm his stacks, because he needs those stacks to really unlock all of his potential. So if you really want to focus him as your DPS, you're going to want him at max stacks, and that means 2.5 million stacks. It's going to take a while. So go out and use him. So you have both Melf and Penelope in your format. Just wondering who's setting your bud. Melf is a visual bug. Yeah, it's a pure visual bug. Otherwise, Melf would be getting Champion of Timora, because he's adjacent to Omen. That's how you can tell. Just got Havalar. I'm having trouble getting Dembo out on reset. What am I missing? You got to hit his ultimate. You got to hit her ultimate. Excuse me. So when you reset, you got to hit the ultimate to bring it back out. Otherwise, you can try on some platforms leaving this level up to X100. On some platforms, if you have the save formation and you're using Modron automation, it will come out with the imp out. That's a bug. At some point, they will finally fix that. They tried to fix that, and they fixed it on some platforms, but not all. I think that's all the specific questions. What's steaming behind me? That's a humidifier. What sort of tea? I don't have any tea. I had apple juice, and I drank it all. Can VRE from Acquisitions Inc. be one of the 2020 heroes? I would love that. I don't know if that's going to happen. I want VRE in, and I want his ultimate to have a chandelier drop from the ceiling. Even though there is no ceiling on any level, I want a chandelier to slowly drop down, and then VRE jumps up, swings across it, and then attacks stuff. I want to see that. Hello, I haven't been playing long. My free time gate characters that I don't have are Rosie and Ishii. Which one should I grab? Probably Ishii. Neither of them are super strong currently, but Ishii's a fun champion. Probably more fun than Rosie at the current time. Sorry, Kate. What day is today? It's Saturday. What else do we have here? Well, it'll be next Saturday's deep dive. I have no idea. Dylan and I are sitting down this week to figure that out. We had figured everything out through the end of last year, and then this one starting off the year, because we knew we wouldn't be able to sit down this week and hash that out, because they were going to be busy coming back. So we're going to sit down at the beginning of next week and figure that out, because we got a lot more Gaarawarr's deep dive shows to do. I've just unlocked Deacon is the free time gate. Nice. Which is the next speed hero I should aim to unlock with time gate pieces? Shandy, right here. If you don't have Shandy already. Deacon and Shandy are probably the first two targeted speed champions I would pick up. Specifically, not because they're the most amazing speed champions, but because they both kick off and do their thing from the get-go without needing any kind of item support. Like I said before, Melf and Briv both need heavy item support. They're black holes for item levels, and you really need a lot of item levels to get them to do their thing. The same with Sentry. Whereas Deacon and Shandy, throw them in, pick their spec, fire away. Deacon has a feat you can get later, but he still has fantastic speed, along with Shandy right away without any gear. What am I forgetting? Am I forgetting anything? I think we have a bunch of the CNE shows are starting up next week. Not all of them fired off this week for a variety of reasons. So we should be seeing them. As far as I know, we should be seeing them return next week. For my shows, you can find me on Fridays, Gaarawarr's Guide to Everything Untitled Champions, the general Q&A show for all the questions. So like these kinds of questions, we do this for like just questions from chat. We pull questions for chat for 2 hours straight instead of just a little bit after these focus guides. And then we'll be back again next Saturday with the, whatever next week's focused Gaarawarr's Guide is. We'll have figured that out by then. And, you can ask me next Friday in my Gaarawarr's Guide to Everything stream. Jay's telling me most of the show should be back up and running this coming week. I think I talked to Jason Charles Miller yesterday. He streams over on his channels, and he does, lately he's been doing these awesome, song request streams where you go in and he's got this really big song list that you can choose from. And, you can make a donation to him, like, tip with bits or through an external site, throw a couple bucks at him and he plays a song. He's basically busking on Twitch, which is fantastic. And he's super talented. But Jason Charles Miller joins Dylan for Bardic Inspiration on Tuesdays. I think he said they're still off for a little bit. So hopefully everybody else is back next week. Yeah. I just got 2 of each patron chest from those hidden codes. Should I save them to try and target epics, or should I just open them? For context, I only just unlocked Mert. If you only just unlocked Mert, honestly, I recommend holding on to them a bit. I personally recommend to play the long game with patron chests, and don't open patron chests until you've got your full core and evergreen in epics, just for the chance, just so that when you open those patron chests, epics will go to event champions. All right. We are done. That has been 2 hours. I need to rest my voice now. I shall see you all next week. Take care of yourselves and other people. Be good to one another. Still wear your masks because there's still a pandemic. And I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.